Love, that ever-flowing liquid fire of life, ever-expanding and illuminating truth, which is always revealed with wisdom, a spiritual nutrient necessary for vitality that is maintained through selflessness, a filter of ether that aids purity, which is love. Love, a limitless paper lantern floating into infinity on the intentions and actions of initiates of the mysteries. Welcome, fellow Phoenixes, to the Spiritual Phoenix Podcast. I'm Ross Cessna, and together we are the Spiritual Phoenix. The intent of this show isn't to tell you what to think, but to get you to think, and originally articulate yourselves in a way that is uplifting. We are the artists of our lives, and today is a blank canvas. Let's collectively create a better tomorrow. And now I'd like to take a moment and focus on what we're grateful for today. Today, I'm grateful that I got to go out to Sedona. My mom was going out there for a conference, and she had asked me to go for the past couple of years, but I never went due to my mental illness or issues with the mental illness at that time, or mental health, whatever you want to label it. And then also issues with addiction, not wanting to be away from my stash, not wanting to step back from it. And it was a really good experience for me. I did get sick at the end of it because of all the pollen, and there was just a lot of interesting experiences that I'd like to articulate. And since I only put out one episode last week, I figured I would do potentially 3 this week. I'm still trying to secure a guest. Her and I had talked about her coming on at some point this week, so we'll see if that pans out. If not, it is what it is. I'd like to get into, I have a review that I'd like to read. This is from Jessica Drew. Hello, Jessica, and thank you. She put, remarkable reach on a vast number of mind and journey expanding topics with an honest and authentic aura that is a rarity these days, but very much needed. Keep up the phenomenal work, Ross. Much love from every infinite particle of my being. Then there's a little heart, and it says Jessica Drew. Jessica, thank you. You're somebody else that I've interacted with through Positive Heads. Most of my listeners and people that kind of vibe with this are from Positive Heads. Most of the people that have left a review. And if you haven't listened to that podcast yet, if you're not familiar with it, I suggest that you do listen to it. It's really been a great asset in my mental wellness toolkit. I don't get to listen to it as much as I'd like to these days, but when I do, it resonates with me. And the good thing is Brandon's so prolific, there's a huge library of stuff that I can go back and listen to. So Jessica, thank you for reaching out. And you and I had talked about you coming on the podcast at some point because you have a very unique story, and you'd like to share it, and I'd really like to have you on, so we'll see how that pans out. And with that, I'm going to get into a couple quotes for today. The shaman no longer looks for meaning in life, but brings meaning to every situation. The shaman stops looking for truth and instead brings truth to every encounter. You don't look for the right partner, you become the right partner, and then the right partner finds you. It's a very active practice focused on healing. And that was said by Alberto Villoldo, I want to say is how you pronounce that. The shaman is a person who is able to transcend the dimensional confines of cultural existence. They know more than the people they serve. The people they serve are like children within the game of culture. Only the shaman knows that culture is a game. Everyone else takes it seriously. That's how he can do his magic. And that was said by Terence McKenna. Intent is what sends a shaman through a wall, through space, to infinity. And that was said by Carlos Castaneda. So, I'm going to kind of address some of these quotes as I go through, and how they relate to me specifically. But I'll kind of start with when I got to... My mom and I landed in Phoenix, and we were driving out through the desert. And as some of you may know, I lived in Las Vegas for a while, and the scenery, although it's somewhat different in Phoenix, Arizona area, the desert landscape is still the same. And there was this weird kind of old energy coming back to me. Vegas, in lots of ways, I mean, I was depraved prior to getting to Vegas, but Vegas kind of took me to a new level of debauchery and depravity. I was away from all my family. I was able to really dive off the deep end more so with partying. I really became even more disillusioned than I was about authority. The industry that I had went out there to work really kicked the crap out of me because it made me a number. The level to which I treated women poorly was exacerbated in many essences. Granted, it was still pretty crappy before I left Ohio to go to Vegas. I was still pretty shitty to women. So there was just like this lot of negativity. And when I left that area, I left broken, I left defeated, I left beaten. And it really was kind of like I left a part of me back there. And this is going to sound weird to a lot of people, but if you've listened to a lot of the stuff that I've talked about and you still resonate with it, this might make sense to some of you. If it doesn't make sense to you, that's totally cool. I don't expect you to accept or believe stuff that doesn't vibe with you. It doesn't make my experience any less. I'm just expressing things as they happened. It kind of felt like this part of me that I left in the desert, this part of my soul was reintegrating with me. And I wasn't necessarily thinking about using, but there was like this focus on psychedelics, booze, all this stuff. And again, it wasn't about wanting to use. It was kind of like this part of me that didn't know how to be where I was at in the new modality, was kind of going through this old pattern of thinking about situations. I used to drive out into the desert on psychedelics or smoking a blunt or drinking a beer. So that was really how a lot of my time driving through the desert was. So it was this really weird experience. My mom and I made it safely to Sedona. We went to this, we just kind of did regular things that people do when they get to town or whatever. Oh, one of the things too is in the car and on the plane ride out, I kept having like, no, not on the plane ride, in the car ride to Sedona rather, I was falling asleep while my mom was driving, and I kept having these really vivid, obscure, somewhat like frightening dreams, and I can't specifically recall any of the imagery in them, just that's kind of how it was, and it was stuff that's atypical for me. So I don't really know what that was about. I really kind of, again, related to that part of me that was kind of coming back into me. So we get to Sedona, do the regular thing, we go out for the sunset, and there's this spot by the hotel that we stayed at. I think it's called Sky Harbor Hotel or something like that. It's right by the airport in Sedona on top of this hill. There's a spot, all these other people are there, and I kind of tried sun gazing. And for those who don't know what that is, that's when you stare at the sun 15 minutes before it sets or 15 minutes after rising, somewhere in that vicinity. And there was this weird instance where the sun looked different to me than it had within that sun gazing. And granted, staring at the sun isn't really the best thing to do. But sun gazing is something that's talked about. So I tried it. The sun looked different. It kind of had this weird rotation to it and pulsation through staring at it. And there was like this kind of pain in like my third eye, and maybe it was from squinting my brow. I don't know. It was a peculiar experience. That's all I can really relate. One of the things too, on the way to Sedona, we stopped at this place called Montezuma's Castle, and it's a misnomer because it's not attributed to Montezuma. Montezuma was in South America, if I'm not mistaken, or Mexico, which I guess it's more like Central America, I think. But these group of settlers named it that because that's what they attributed it to in like the 1800s or whatever. And it's this city built into a wall, like a mountain wall. And I'll post some pictures of it or something in the Facebook Spiritual Phoenix podcast Facebook page. But I kind of felt like I had been there before, even though I've never been there. And it wasn't deja vu, because it wasn't like me, Ross Cessna, has been there. It was like me in another life had been there. I've never really had that experience that I can recall before. So that was very interesting to me. We went to this other spot called, I forget the name of it, but it's like this giant pool, and it's another part of the Montezuma thing. And it's kind of interesting because it's this pool, and it pushes all this silt and water out. Nothing can grow in there, though, but there's like not a lot of life. It's filled with leeches and like all this like water scorpions, like the stuff that you wouldn't want to mess with. I just kind of mentioned that because it was kind of cool. But anyhow, so Sedona just kind of goes along its Sedona-y way. I kind of have these weird experiences with sleeping, having these weird dreams, sometimes just in like that twilight stage between sleep and being awake, or between awake and falling asleep. My mom goes to see this psychic that she always goes to see when she goes out there, and I have an appointment scheduled the next day. So I kind of looking forward to that. And that morning, I wake up and I'm reading outside in front of the hotel because I'm using my e-cigarette and I don't want to set off the smoke alarm or anything like that. And I see this movement out of the corner of my eye. And then I see there's a pool, and the pool's lit, and there's this bush in front of the pool, and there's a hole in the bush kind of, so you can see the pool through the bush. And something kind of walks in front of it. I'm like, what is that? It's kind of big to be up that high. And sure enough, it's a bobcat. And I like to look up the spiritual meaning of different animals when I see them, especially when it's not something I've commonly seen. I don't know that I've ever seen a wild bobcat, and I've certainly never seen a wild bobcat within 15 feet or less of me. And I can't recall what the meaning of it is now off the top of my head, but it was very profound, kind of like they live in between two realms, stealthy. And one of the meanings I attributed to it, since of all the stealth, is kind of seeing the unseen, which has been a reoccurring theme in my life. So anyhow, I go and I meet this psychic that my mom's kind of talked to before. And there's instantly like this energetic connection. She invites me into her house while she finishes getting ready before doing our session, and I'm just sitting there kind of talking. And she said that she's been giving paintings to people. And this is a painting she made for me, and it kind of looks like a bird. The thing is, she's made these paintings before she knew I was coming out. And although I had reached out to her and asked her about potentially being on the podcast and asked to record stuff, I literally believe that she didn't make this prior to that. And she kind of said that I energetically connected with her before I even had reached out to her. And if you kind of look, this is like a wing, a tail feathers, a head. It's like a phoenix, which is really, really cool, and it's really odd. And she even kind of said that it reminded her of like a raptor or a bird of prey or something like that. So that was one interesting thing. One of the first things that she really reached out and told me is, I've read some of your poetry. I didn't dive too deep because I kind of wanted to have a fresh impression based on you. I believe that. I get that. I understand that. she also made me a crystal totem. It's one of the things that's kind of in the package reading that my mom had let me pick out or whatever. And if you can see, it's a citrine, tiger eye. This is some kind of diamond. I forget the name of it. It's obviously not like a diamond from Africa. It's from somewhere locally. And if you can see behind these feathers, there's a little hole in there. And it's kind of like she said, it's kind of where shamans can pass through. The other thing that she said is this is kind of like a Katsina or Kachina doll in some ways. And I forget the feathers. I think this one is a macaw feather, and this one is like a quail or some kind of dove, or I don't remember that specific feather. But this really vibed with me, especially the raw tiger eye. I have 2 pendants that I wear that I've made. One's a blue-black tiger eye, and one's this reddish tiger eye. So they're both off color. The only tiger eye I don't have to wear is a standard tiger eye like that one. So that was really interesting, and seeing it in the raw form is really cool. So anyhow, we go, we talk a little bit. She kind of dials in on some things right away, which I'm people might not believe this, but I'm very skeptical of other people's abilities. And I'm not skeptical in the sense that I don't believe other people have abilities, because I used to be that way. Nobody could do this. But then I've had experiences in my own life through tarot readings, things like that, where I get that that's a real thing. But some people, I feel, don't, and that's whatever. I just like to kind of evaluate situations and pick up on if I think people are being genuine or what they see. I also understand that sometimes disbelief can sway a reading. And she's dialed in. So we go for this drive up to this point, and we just talk, and she's talking about the spot. She mentions that there's like this shaman cave up on the hill. I've taken some photos of that area, so maybe I'll try to put those up there as well. But this area that we go to is like this pretty important area. Then we kind of do that thing, chat, and then she takes me down to this other spot, and she draws a circle and has me go and collect rocks to put on the circle. I need 4 for each direction, and then 1 for like magic and 1 for the future or whatever. Well, as I'm walking, this little intuitive voice inside says, "Find a white rock." And if any of you are familiar with Sedona, I mean this area in particularly, there's a lot of red rocks there. White rocks really aren't a thing. So I'm kind of like, oh, that's stupid. There's not any white rocks up here. But I was going to give up and just try to find a red rock. This little voice again says, "Find the white rock." So I commit to just finding this white rock. Sure enough, I find a rock, and I don't know if it's just nicked up enough to where it is white, or if it was white and there's just red dust on it, but it's definitely white. It was the whitest rock that I found. So that was kind of peculiar to me. Anyhow, we do the stone circle. She kind of calls all this stuff up. I'm not going to go into the full reading. I made a video of it, so I'll put that up or whatever. And if you're listening to the podcast on iTunes, I do have a YouTube channel. So there's a link on my website. You can get to all my other stuff. But yeah, she does this. Then she kind of does this shamanic drum circle thing. She's just drumming. She tells me to lay down and picture this energetic roots going down and connecting with the core of the earth. Now, my root chakra has been out of balance, so is my heart, and my throat chakra needs a little tuning. Anyhow, I lay down and I let her do the shamanic drumming, and I picture these roots connecting, and I feel like I'm being gripped by the earth. as these roots come down, like I feel really connected energetically. And then next thing I feel is like I'm upside down and being suspended from the earth by this energetic thing, and below me is like this sea of infinite universe. It was a really profound experience, and I've had stuff like that without drugs before. It's becoming more common, and it's not like terrifying. I'm still grounded in reality. It's like this mental voyage thing, and some people are going to get it, some people won't. Totally fine. I'm not here to convince anybody of what I've been through or to change your opinion. I'm just expressing my story. So all that happens. The other thing is, if you think about it, like a lot of people perceive that we are right side up. We actually are upside down, to the left, to the right. Like in 3D space, we on Earth we perceive ourselves as such. Even your eyes perceive everything in a different way, and your brain flips it around so it is right side up. So it's really nebulous how we actually are connected to things. Right now, we're pick a direction, and that's where you're standing in relation to infinity. So I always thought that was kind of neat. I shouldn't say always. Since I've had that revelation, I thought it was kind of neat. Let me put that caveat on there. So yeah, this experience was very surreal. And she kind of did this like thing where she tapped me with a feather, and she said, energetically, your chakras are all kind of tuned in. The thing is that they're going to be activated now or whatever. And she kind of like hit on some other things that were really interesting me, and like this medicine wheel. Like I said, I'll put the video up on my YouTube. If the sound's good enough, maybe I'll put the sound up as a independent episode or whatever. But yeah, it was odd. And she kind of said that I would get, the next couple days would be difficult for me. I've read a book on energy healing, and one of the things it talks about is in the release of different energies, kind of getting sick, feeling like crap. And that's really what happened to me. I got progressively more ill. That's when I got like a bad chest cold, nose cold, body aches, extreme tiredness. One of the things too about different shamanic cultures is this belief of there's a lot of spiritual power in phlegm. It's kind of gross, but also very interesting, because this whole experience, she kind of said I would get worse, my stomach would get worse. That's the other thing too. I had stomach problems the whole trip, and she had said that she had talked to these elders who came up at one point and said that this is a year of stomach ailments, and that my stomach was kind of realigning itself, retuning itself because of the energies at Sedona. I think that people that have been to Sedona may understand how kind of interesting of an experience it is on an energetic level. Anyhow, I was sick. Pretty much that's how the vacation went. She said I would have these dreams too. I've been having a lot of dreams lately, and it's weird because I dream somewhat like every week or every couple weeks, but the amount of dreams I've had has been substantial. She kind of said that my stomach problems would correct themselves by Monday. Pretty much did. So she's really dialed in on a lot of stuff that did happen, and it was just a heavy experience. One thing I'd like to really note is that I'd always thought I had some kind of tie to shamanism. Various times on mushrooms, like I felt called to that. I always wanted some kind of validation from it. Then I realized that it's not something anybody can validate, and there's going to be some duality and some paradox here. And I eventually accepted that I was, because of my experiences and how they lined up. Now, some people can believe something and it's not true about themselves. It's not for me to determine what is or isn't with somebody like that, and I need to really work on avoiding doing that, because I don't know what anybody else's experiences were, and they could be absolutely correct in what their experiences were. It's not for me to judge. Anyhow, I had made peace with the fact that I was shamanic, and I didn't really need anybody to validate it. She did validate that. She also said that at some point I would travel somewhere into the Southwest, and some native elder would likely also validate that. That I had a tie to Native American communities, which, if you've listened to this podcast before, some of the episodes, I talk about how I've always had an affinity for it. As a child, I had a Kachina doll, or a Katsina doll, in like 3rd or 4th grade. I don't think that's a typical thing for boys, for anybody to have a Katsina doll, really. I mean, certain cultures, yes. Not John Q. white bread suburbanite me. I mean, it is typical for me, I guess, but I don't know. It's just weird. I've always been drawn to that. So anyhow, I had that kind of validation experience. I'm getting better from the head cold part of it. I think that part of that really was just energy clearing out. Part of it's the fact that I likely need to stop using my e-cigarette. And yeah, I've just been taking it easy since I've been back, but I felt that I would do another episode. I kind of wrote a closing. Oh, I want to get into the quotes real quick and explain what they mean, because some of the quotes I used are somewhat strong. The shaman no longer looks for meaning in life, but brings meaning to every situation. So I used to look for different meaning in stuff. Now I just kind of accept that I kind of have meaning to it. It's no longer looking, it's saying, oh, this is what this is. Which is kind of weird for me at times, and I'm sure other people can relate to that if they've been on that experience. The shaman stops looking for truth and instead brings truth to every encounter. That one for me, I used to really weigh things out. Is this true? Is that true? Just because I validate something as true or not true doesn't make it true or not true. Like for somebody else's experiences or things that externally. So that's the stopping of that. You don't look for the right partner, you become the right partner. I used to always look for the perfect woman for me. The thing about it is, my idea of the perfect woman is, it's practical, but it's practically impractical to find that. So over time, I've worked on refining me, becoming somebody that I would want to date, and learning how to be there for people, but not have to have this, what's the word I'm looking for? Codependency. Codependency is so rampant in our romantic relationships culturally, where people feel the need to talk to each other every day. If they didn't text me back right now, I'm gonna be all mad. You know what I mean? And then the right partner finds you. I shouldn't say that. Most of the time when I've pursued different romantic relationships, it hasn't been the best ones for me. When the women kind of approached me, if I felt connected to them, those have been the better ones for me. Until my lower self got involved, and then I kind of wrecked it and ruined it, but that's how it was supposed to happen, because I wouldn't have learned the lessons had I not acted that way in the past. Shamanism is a very active practice focused on healing. So for me, I used to think healing was the laying on of hands or whatever, and it could be for some people. And I think for me, mine's more mental healing through the things that I've been through, expressing that, empathetic healing, connecting on an energetic level. So that's kind of how I vibe with that. The next quote: "The shaman is a person who is able to transcend the dimensional confines of cultural existence." I've definitely been looking outside of culture for a while. I have a lot better perspective on it now than when I originally did, because I think one of the I like to say this word a lot, traps that people fall into when they look outside of culture, is they look outside of culture through their individual lens of everything. They see culture as this behemoth, this monster, this terrible thing, and it definitely can be, but the further that you stretch back from it, it's exactly how it should be. Otherwise it wouldn't be. It might not be how people want it to be right now. There are definitely better ways culture could go, but it is what it is, and focusing energy on it and making myself in fear, making myself upset, making myself this or that, doesn't accomplish anything beyond making me fearful, making me upset, making me whatever. There's a lot of good things to culture that people tend to forget. The more they know more than the people they serve. The people they serve are like children within the game of culture. Only the shaman knows that culture is a game. Now, only the shaman knows that culture is a game. Everyone else takes it seriously. That's how he can do his magic. So, I kind of made this analogy about children. I want to say it was when I met Erica Middlemas out in Phoenix for lunch. So it's interesting that this came up again. I made it to somebody, I don't know who, but talking to certain people on certain wavelengths is kind of like children, and it's a very isolating experience for me. And that's kind of my ego in some ways, but it's kind of also my honesty with where I've been with things. A lot of people don't understand. And just like adults that are around kids, they need adult time. I need like spiritual adult time. And when I act childish, spiritually young, I should say maybe, a lot of people don't get that either. Because they don't understand the polarity of it. Or I try to have an innocent sense of humor anymore. I used to be very crude and vulgar. A lot of people find that vulgarity is humorous. I used to. I'm not judging. It just doesn't work for me anymore. Those words have energetic repercussions in my feeling. Granted, sometimes I'm not perfect at it. I'm not perfect at anything. So yeah, even if some people are children, they still know more than me about stuff. I don't know everything. Maybe that's what my thing is. I know that I don't know everything. I don't take everything so seriously. I don't know. Like, I just kind of wanted to deflate the children element, because I do see it that way, and I don't, I guess. And maybe that'll make sense, maybe it won't. Intent is what sends a shaman through a wall, through space, to infinity. My intent to get better has been a catalyst for me getting better. That intent may have came from outside of me. Maybe it did come from inside of me. I don't know. It all comes from one source anyhow, so I'm part of that source. So regardless, it is what it is. My intent to do this podcast is what's made this podcast. My intent to make jewelry. Intention sets the stage for everything. Just saying you're going to do something is great, but do you intend to do so? A lot of people say, well, I want to wake up early, but then they don't like waking up early. Or I want to do this, but I don't like doing this. If you intend to do it, like, not like, it shouldn't matter. And if you intend to do it long enough, maybe that not like will turn into like. When I intended to do this, I was afraid of it, but my intent pushed me through that fear. When I started to speak about my mental health experiences, I was afraid out of my mind. My intent pushed me through that barrier of that wall. And now I'm going to get into this little closing thing that I wrote. When I address myself as a shaman, I do not mean that I am the refined shaman in the purest essence. Quite honestly, I haven't dedicated the work to be there yet. What I mean is that my experiences with mental health, complete reality-shattering psychosis, addiction, and climbing out of the black hole pit that I had ended up in via the ethereal branches of the world tree have put me in the position of being a fledgling shaman. I have been initiated into the invisible mystery schools through means which destroy many. I attribute none of this to myself, but to the way, the mysteries, whatever, seeing a purpose in me being where I am. Through my life experiences, perception, ability to be honest about my experiences, and the constant refining of humility learned through embarrassment, I am a good candidate for the role. That being said, I don't think such titles as shaman, healer, empath, or whatever you wish to call it, are just bestowed divinely, and the fullness of those abilities are present immediately. It's a matter of refining those natural abilities. I'm not looking for a teacher either, because when these gifts first existed, the first person or people to receive them had no teachers, only the mysteries. While I can do some research into different modalities of meditation, healing, non-drug induced trances, I have to find my path and create my own modalities. I am a techno-shaman, and I affect consciousness through my efforts with this podcast, with my musical endeavors, my art, my jewelry, my poetry, my writing. It will not affect everyone. It may not affect many. That isn't the point of this gift. The scale of my impact is of minor importance. I could be swept under the dust of time and still inspire someone or change someone's conscious who is to become a major catalyst in mental and emotional evolution of humanity, and that is fine with me. And with that, I love, respect, and appreciate all of you. You can follow me on social media at Spiritual Phoenix. Visit the website thespiritualphoenix.com. Like I said, I love, respect, and appreciate all of you. Love and light. Time to put this episode on the pyre.
Don't believe. Don't follow. Do not consume. Do not watch. Largely what I'm talking about here is reclaiming experience. This is what's been taken from us. It's a self-advancing, self-expanding, self-defining process. And it takes no prisoners.
The real world isn't a spiritual world, it isn't a material world, it isn't an empty world, it isn't a solid world. It's simply